The gentleman said, "Learning is not to be stopped. Indigo, which is extracted from bluegrass, is greener than the blue of bluegrass. Ice, which is crystallized from water, is colder than water. The wood is straight because the ink line gives it a standard. And if it is bent by fire, it can be used to make wheels. The bent wood is in line with the standard of round, and even if it is exposed to the hot sun, the wood will not become straight again, because it has gone through a process such as fire baking. So, wood can become straighter when it has an ink line for a standard, and a sword can become sharp when it is polished by a whetstone. A gentleman is learned and has to constantly reflect on himself every day in order to become wiser and behave without any faults. Therefore, it is impossible to know how high the sky is without climbing to the top of a high mountain. It is impossible to know how thick the earth is without diving into a deep stream. It is impossible to know how extensive and profound the learning is without listening to the words left by the previous kings. The people living in Wu, Yu, Dongyi, and Baiku were all born with the same cry, but they grew up with different customs and habits. The psalmist says, "O gentlemen, do not always think of a stable life. Be respectful in your work and love the way of righteousness. If the gods hear all this you do, they will bestow great happiness on you. There is no greater God than to receive moral instruction. And there is no longer-term blessing than to be free from calamity." I used to think all day long, but found that the knowledge I gained by thinking was not as much as the knowledge I learned in a moment. I used to stand on tiptoe for a long time and look into the distance, but found that this method was not as broad as climbing up to a high place to see. When I climbed to a high place and waved, my arms did not lengthen, but I could let people in the distance see. When I shouted in the direction of the wind, my voice was not louder than before, but I could let people in the distance hear it clearly. Those who travel far with the help of chariots and horses do not rely on their own feet, but they can reach places thousands of miles away. Those who travel far with the help of boats and ships are not all good swimmers, but they can cross rivers. The nature of a gentleman is no different from that of ordinary people, but it is only because they are good at achieving their goals with the help of external forces. In the south, there is a bird called mongoloid, which uses its own feathers to make a nest and weaves them with hair and ties them to the stems of reeds, thatch, and other plants. As a result, the wind broke the stems, and the nest tied to the stems fell with the wind, killing the eggs and the hatchlings. This is not a poorly woven bird's nest, but what it is tied to determine the outcome. There is a kind of grass in the west, called shot grass, whose stem is 4 inches high and grows on a high mountain, facing a 100-foot abyss. This is so, not because its stem can grow so high, but because it stands on a high mountain. The tumbleweed grows in the hemp ground, and even without external support, it can grow upright. If white sand is mixed into the black silt, it becomes as black as the silt. The aromatic root of orchid acacia is called dahurica. But if its root is dipped in foul water, it will make the gentleman afraid to approach and the common man unwilling to wear it on his body, not because its essence becomes no longer beautiful, but as a result of being soaked in dirty water. Therefore, when a gentleman settles down, he must choose suitable people to be his neighbors, and when he goes out to play, he must be close to people of virtue, that is, to prevent being tainted by evil, and to be able to approach the right and proper thoughts. The accumulation of small good deeds will lead to noble virtues and gradually lead to profound wisdom, and thus to the spiritual realm of a saint. Therefore, without accumulating 1.5 steps of travel, there is no way to reach a place thousands of miles away. Without accumulating small sources of flow, there is no way to merge into a river and an ocean. 1,000 miles of horse is fast, but it cannot do a step equivalent to the usual distance of 10 steps. An inferior horse can go far even if it walks for 10 days, because it can keep on walking. If you carve a knife and stop, even decaying wood cannot be carved. If you can persistently carve, even hard objects like gold and stone can be carved into something beautiful. The earthworm does not have sharp claws and teeth, nor strong bones, But it can eat upward to the soil and drink downward to the sweet spring, because it is dedicated to its heart. The crab has 6 legs and 2 large pincers, but it cannot survive after leaving the nest of snakes and eels, because it is impatient and not dedicated. Therefore, without the spirit of concentration and hard work, one cannot maintain clear wisdom. Without hard work, one will not achieve great achievements. He who wanders on a divergent path will not reach his destination. And a subject who serves 2 sovereigns at the same time will eventually be abandoned by both. The human eye does not focus on 2 things at the same time and still see clearly, nor do the human ears focus on 2 sounds at the same time and still hear them clearly. The dragon snake has no feet but can fly up in the air, and the rat, who has 5 survival skills, is often in a poor state. The psalmist says, "The cuckoo bird, which built its nest in the mulberry tree, raises its 7 children fairly as one." The virtuous gentleman, too, is always firm and consistent in his conduct. The mind becomes as hard as a rock when it is steadfast and unbiased. Therefore, gentlemen must maintain the quality of steadfastness and devotion. Where should learning begin and where should it end? The answer is, in terms of learning methods, it should begin with the recitation of the scriptures and end with the study of rituals and laws. In terms of the meaning of learning, it should begin with the aspirant and end when he becomes a sage. The most profound part of it is to be explored only through long-term accumulation, and can be learned only at the moment of the end of life. Therefore, although the process of reciting the classics will end at the end of one's life, one must not slacken off in one's pursuit of becoming a sage. If you learn all your life, you will always be a human being. If you give up learning, you will be no different from a beast.